Hello, everyone, and welcome back to 3 questions in 3 minutes with our sports betting power players. Today, I'm joined by Dan Wallach. He is a legal analyst and the founder of Wallach Legal LLC, a law firm focused on sports betting. Daniel, thank you so much for joining me.
Anna, thank you for having me on and for having me be part of this special segment. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, we're very excited to hear what you have to say. So what made you decide to found a law firm focused on sports betting?
Well, it was very serendipitous that at this momentous juncture in U.S. sports betting history, the United States Supreme Court overturned the federal ban on state authorized sports wagering. And that opened up the floodgates for sports betting to be a possibility in every state besides Nevada. And for me, it was a little bit of it was perfect timing. It was a business opportunity. I had been spending an inordinate amount of time analyzing the lawsuit involving PASPA and basically being a thought leader and analyst around the legalization of sports betting. I mean, my visibility in the space was at an all-time high going back 5 years. And at the time, I thought, well, why should I continue in my conventional legal career when I have all these great opportunities in front of me?
You were so successful, actually, that you were invited to testify before the New York State Senate on sports wagering. Is that correct? Could you tell us a little bit more about the argument that you were making?
Sure. It wasn't that long ago that there was a debate within the New York legislature and a debate among many people around sports betting that maybe New York needs to have a constitutional amendment in order to legalize online sports betting. They already had in-person sports betting at the casinos, but then Governor Cuomo really stood in the way of the legislature passing legislation to authorize mobile because he thought, well, if the Constitution of New York requires the gambling to take place at the casino, well, that rules out mobile sports betting. And my testimony was the only one that was of record before a New York legislative body to make the case that an amendment to the New York Constitution was not required for the legislative authorization of sports betting. And I pointed to the comparisons to pari-mutuel betting on horse racing, that at the time horse race betting was authorized under the Constitution back in the late 1930s, it had to take place around the oval. It had to take place on the property. And that was built into the 1939 New York State Constitution. And then over the course of many years, the legislature gradually expanded the manner in which people could bet on horse racing over the phone, advanced deposit wagering, and then eventually internet betting on horse racing. And I pointed to that analog and made the case that a wager was akin to a contract, and that the contract is deemed to be made at the point where the bet is accepted under state law. And using a contract-based analysis and pointing to the precedent of horse racing, I testified before the New York Senate and laid out the reasons why a constitutional amendment was unnecessary and that the legislature would be able to move forward and enact a mobile sports betting law without going through the ballot initiative process. And I think that testimony was instrumental in convincing the legislature and eventually Governor Cuomo into relenting on the necessity of having a ballot initiative. I mean, we'll never know for sure, but I was the only person to testify on that issue before a legislative body. And, less than 2 years later, we now have an online sports betting law. So I think to some degree, my testimony was persuasive to some critical policymakers in dispensing with the requirement that they need to amend the state constitution. So that was a very important piece of testimony that I think helped pave the way for online sports betting in New York. And I'm very proud to be able to have done that and contributed to this growing industry.
Certainly, yes, definitely. And I'm so glad that you brought up the current law. I'm wondering if you have any modifications or would you like to see the law amended in any way?
Well, two things. Obviously, the tax rate is unprecedented. Nowhere else besides New Hampshire and Rhode Island does the state collect 51% of operator revenues. So I think the first year will be a trial period. And depending upon how that plays out and what the actual performance looks like, I think the legislature should go back and reevaluate where the ideal tax rate should be. I mean, historically in other states, the tax rate for online sports betting, ranges anywhere from, the high single digits to the low teens. What New York is proposing or is actually doing now is almost 4 times the rate that other states charge their operators. So that's one area that may be worth revisiting a year from now, or maybe even as early as this legislative session. But I think the likelihood is, let's see what the first year looks like and then go in and tinker with the law to kind of make modifications and improvements. The other area I would like to see improved or changed is to increase the participation in mobile sports betting to include horse race tracks, off-track betting facilities, and most importantly, professional sports venues. I mean, mobile is going to be a huge part of this ecosystem, but the millions of people who go through the turnstiles at pro sports venues, horse race tracks, OTB facilities, that's a large segment of the population that might otherwise not be acquirable in a traditional mobile format. If you could tap into the people who go to the games and have mobile kiosks at Yankee Stadium, at Madison Square Garden, at all the major pro sports arenas around New York State, you're talking about millions of consumers that may otherwise not be signed up with FanDuel, DraftKings, or BetMGM. So one area that I'd like to see modified as early as this legislative session is to expand the reach of mobile sports betting to include kiosks, mobile kiosks that are tied by computer to the casinos in upstate New York that work the same way that betting on a mobile device works. So if you can include those distribution points, I think there's an opportunity here to grow the market substantially.
Thank you so much, Dan. It's been wonderful having you. You've really offered some amazing insights, and we're very pleased that you are one of our power players in sports betting.
Thank you very much, Anna. My pleasure.